there's one big story that I've been watching, and I'm seeing that it is all over newspaper headlines. In fact, I would say the majority of newspapers are leading with the story is after its launch 9 months ago, just 9 months ago, you'll remember we were there as a program, the Nelson Mandela Hospital is now saying that they are lacking funds and that they are still at this point not fully operational. I mean, I remember going on a tour of the hospital. This was actually at its launch. It wasn't at the opening, but it was the launch that we did an outside broadcast from there. The most incredible equipment, the most beautiful atmosphere. It was a stunning, or is still a stunning building, and the hospital was meant to be serving children and families as well as in the SADC region. So this is something that we opened with much optimism and thinking that this was going to do such a good job. Well, we are hoping that it's still going to do this, but right now it's just saying that there are great funding issues at this point. Now, this hospital, remember, it cost R1 billion to raise these funds for this hospital. And I know that Morning Live was a very key participant in raising all these funds. They had the land. This was at the beginning of the building process. And then, of course, it was just coming in fast and furiously. And it was the most exciting day to be able to be there. Now, we're really hoping to get the hospital CEO, Dr Mandisa Maholwana, onto the show. We're trying to chat telephonically, but we'll just find out what's going on with all of this speculation about the lack of funds and the problems associated at this hospital and why it's not running smoothly. In fact, we've actually got her on the line right now. Let's talk to Dr Mandisa. Dr Maholwana, a very good morning to you. Thank you so very, very much for talking to us here on Morning Live.
Good morning, Leanne. Thank you for the call.
Well, I think I was just giving a bit of background about the hospital and the build-up to it and how exciting the times were, but it just seems at the moment there's a very big glitch happening. What agreement did you have with Treasury regarding funding for the hospital?
Okay, thank you, Leanne, for the question. I think just to clarify in that the modus operandi for the hospital was always to phase in clinical services to ensure that we offer the right level of services and quality for patients, and also to ensure patient safety first. So in terms of the agreement with government for funding, we received the funding as was allocated to the hospital by Treasury. And the operational model for the hospital was always to use a combination of government grants, but also donor funding that we would receive through our fundraising methods.
Yeah. So now what's happening? Because what they're saying now is that, if I can quote from some of the newspaper articles, is that the Gauteng government is saying that it's not part of the budget plans at all.
And Leanne, the Treasury is one that allocates the grant that Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital has received. So the funds do come from national, but there have been discussions and engagement with the Gauteng Department of Health. But in terms of the process, the funding does come from Treasury and through national.
Because the hospital, basically, just reading further on, saying that the hospital's never been part of government's long-term infrastructural budgeting plans. That's what the government is saying. It's estimated that it needs R500 million to cover annual operating expenses, but only got 150 million from government and Treasury for the 2017-18 financial year. This is a massive shortfall.
Thank you, Leanne. Yes, that is correct. We did receive 150 million rands from Treasury for this financial year. But for us, that is actually in line with the phasing in, because we had actually already reviewed the model in terms of our operational costs and made it in line to make sure that the funding that we receive from government and what we'll be able to receive from private funding meets the necessary services that we have committed delivering in the first phase of the operations of the hospital.
Well, what's going to happen now? I mean, if we look at the hospital, it's just, as it stands right now, still not fully operational. What does the future hold?
The future is still bright for the hospital, Ian. As I mentioned, we are phasing in all the services, and we are confident we are on track. in terms of what we had laid out as the operational plan for the hospital, and to be able to bring in all the services we have agreed to with national government in the first year.
When we look at some of the services that you've already done, some of the patients that you've seen, I mean, what would you say you've contributed already in the short time that you have been operating? Where have you assisted?
We've actually assisted quite a lot with referrals from Charlotte Macleke Hospital and Chris Aribanagoras Hospital, where there were actually backlogs for radiological services for children. So we've managed to actually take on quite a bit of that backlog, and those patients have actually been seen at the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. So we've been able to diagnose patients through MRI and CT scans, where they've actually been over a 1-year waiting period for some of the children.
Yeah, just I suppose the question that really needs to be asked in terms of funding, is there an alternative source of funding? We know that there was public funding and people coming in and being exceptionally generous, corporate funding as well, to the building of the hospital. But now where you've hit this bit of a glitch with funding and Treasury, where else can you get funding to support the hospital?
Leanne, I think even Treasury alluded to, our operational model was never solely based on government funding. We were always looking at additional donor funding as well. So, like I mentioned earlier, we continue to raise funds in the private sector and also through some of the major donors. And we have actually seen some keen interest to help us get the hospital up and running.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you so much for talking to us. We'll catch up with you again after more developments with the story as well, and perhaps chat to Treasury and see what their plans are. But on the line there, talking to us, was the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital, Dr Mandisa Maholwana, talking about some of the funding issues that have now struck that particular hospital. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this.